Hello, my name is Larry Casso. I'd like to invite you one more time to my studio and invite you to watch a demonstration that's going to be a little bit unusual compared to things that I've done in the past, primarily because we're going to be doing this demonstration in acrylic. Most of you are familiar with my watercolor demonstrations, and however, from time to time we do like to do acrylics. A lot of the students that have worked in this before, as well as myself. Except what's unique about this acrylic is the fact that I experimented with some new techniques. There are a lot of advantages to it. The one thing I would mention to you as we look at this acrylic demonstration, however, is the fact that when you're doing acrylic, you need to understand it as a medium within itself. Many people make a mistake. They get very discouraged trying to do acrylics because they attempt to paint it either like oils or watercolor. And they also use a lot of other added ingredients such as thinners, flow improvers, things like this, which depending on the individual work very fine. However, if you let loose and explore acrylics as a medium within itself, an experiment, don't be afraid of it. I think you'll find that it's a very exciting medium and it has a lot to offer. The particular photograph pardon me, that you're looking at was taken by one of my students, Dr. Ann Robinson, on one of the many trips that she has made to Mexico. And it appealed to me because of the different textures. For instance, the foliage and the shapes of the foliage and the shapes of the actual containers that we see here, and also the fact that we have this horizontal shape going this, vertical shape going this way. We have a horizontal shape going this way and coming back up. So we immediately have the textures of the railing and the textures of the door, the shape of the door, and we have this nice counter movement along with the archway going here, and also the base. Well, let me move that up just a little bit for you. That's the base of the porch going in another direction. So it's something I think that will lend itself to an exciting composition. However, if I were a beginner, I would recommend very seriously that you you look into the possibility of doing a little value study or something like that, because there are things in this that present a few problems. And the primary problem right now is the fact that there is not enough contrast. And I would recommend doing a value study to work out the lights, middle tones, and darks, and so forth, to promote one object above the other as a center of interest, and get some kind of an idea in your own mind that would be very clear. Now, I've done this for so long. Normally when I look at not saying that I don't need to do value studies, I do many, many times still, but one of the things that I've learned through the years is how to simplify. And I looked at this picture, which I feel is a very simple design in the flowers, and also, and more in the foliage than the flowers. I'm going to add more flowers to it in the actual design. But it impressed me because I felt like it had some interesting shapes, and this alone is enough to make a composition. You could really eliminate the background. So for a while, however, I like the arches. I like the shape going this way and this way, which you'll see I'll develop more on my composition. I like the darker door here behind the actual main flower pot that we're going to see here. And so I studied this for a long time, and ironically, not being able to figure out exactly how I wanted to simplify it and what I wanted to do, and Dr. Robinson happened to bring in some information for another student on some particular subject matter, and in this information it has some very strong purples and darks I should say, in a purple sort of a way against an object. And I thought immediately, what I need to do to simplify this is to have all of these shapes and objects very simple, and but to create an effect where my background will be primarily dark. I'm going to have it going from darker to lighter, and creating a situation where as it came down it would be much darker than what I'll have in the pot as well as the foliage, but as it came down further it would get lighter and lighter to emphasize the texture and the shape and the flow of the railing that we see down here. So with this in mind, I concluded that I could make a successful composition out of this simply by creating a dark background behind it, let this stand out like the light was illuminating it, and then really simplify it, add a few extra flowers to it possibly to give it some more color, and I felt it would work very well. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and attempt to do it. Now let's remove our photograph as well as the objects that I had holding those photographs generally will not reproduce too well because of the glare. And I'm going to expand the camera now with this unique remote control that I have set up here, and we're just going to keep going till we get the entire image in the painting. Okay. Now, I want you to notice that in doing an acrylic, first of all, I'm using what's known as a Strathmore illustration board. It's a very heavy illustration board, excuse me, and it's the top of the line, and in the sense that it is very heavy, it has a different texture. There's a similar, I think it's a Strathmore 500 heavyweight. You can use it on either side. It's 100% acid-free and very safe and permanent, but it's a totally different surface from a watercolor, and I find that this works very well in a transparent acrylic. Now notice that all of the lines are very clear. That is because I inked the lines in. Now this is the primary difference in acrylic. I did take some tape and go across the bottom panel here, which I want to be very light. Also went across the top area of the archway here that's going to be collecting a little sunlight. And the rest of the painting, however, I left totally as it is. Now, the reason is that you can paint over acrylic in many ways. A lot of the experimentation that I'm going to do with it, you won't even really be able to tell it until I actually get into the object. But you'll find that the actual demonstration that I'm going to be doing is going to be a lot different in the sense that it's going to be wet on wet, and I'll be using things at a different tones, different levels. So let's just experiment a little bit with this and see what we're going to do. Now, the first thing, as I mentioned, we have this on board. I have tape around the edges. I like a nice edge when I pick it up. And then everything is inked in. Okay, now in acrylic, let's bring our palette here. The first thing I'm going to mention to you is the fact that in acrylic, we're going to mix the pigment. And that's one of the great advantages to doing this. Now again, let's see if we can bring this in just a little bit closer. That's a little bit too far away there, so let's just come back this way. Going to get a little bit of glare, but we can still accomplish our objectives on it. Okay, now I know that I want the primary colors in this to be a raw sienna. And this acrylic, sometimes the tubes will dry. It's very difficult to break the caps like you do on watercolor. I notice I'm going to put the acrylic out rather liberally. It's an inexpensive medium, and don't be afraid to use a lot of it and waste a little bit if necessary. Notice I use those pliers because occasionally it'll stop up at the top. Okay, then I put a little white. Now I want somewhat of a Naples yellow color, so I found that with the raw sienna and the white and just a little bit of cadmium yellow in the acrylic, we can get a very nice Naples looking color. It would be fine like it is, but it'll work very well like I'm doing it. Now, the next color I want to mix is going to be ultramarine blue. I'm going to mix it over on this side of the palette so we don't get it messed up. Then I'm going to come in, and again, let's get those pliers for this alizarin crimson, or as some call it, Elizabeth crimson. Old joke. Okay. We'll put that Elizabeth crimson, I'm so used to saying it that way, in there. And then lastly, we want to get a little bit of Grumbacher black. And this is the only medium. Stepping over here for a moment to get burnt umber. It's the only medium that I use black in besides pastel, because you can't get a real strong dark without it. Okay, now I've got my palette pretty well charged, and what I'm going to do now is take a little raw sienna. Now, I'm going to mention to you, we want to take the white and always add the color. Now, just a little bit I had on my palette, it's going to be just about all I'm going to need. It's going to be a very, very light tone. Now, I know you can't see this very well on the camera, but I think you can make it out well enough. Now, I'm going to add a little bit of the cadmium yellow to it. It'll give it a little bit more neutral color, brighten it up a little bit, somewhat like we get with a Naples. And actually, I've got something here. I think if I put Naples out here, it would be very close. Okay, if not, it's close enough. Okay, so we took the raw sienna, added it to white, put a little Naples yellow in it, and I think we're going to have enough to do what we want to do. But just to be sure, let's add just a little bit more white to it. Because again, remember, I want this to be extremely light. Now notice how large an area I'm mixing. This is where people make their mistake in acrylic. They mix very small areas, flatten it out like this. I promise you it'll dry in 10 minutes or less. If you mix large amounts and keep it like this, and keep it in a large mass like this, I can promise you you'll almost use it as long as you want to. Put it in a sealed container with something in it like a rag or something with water, and I promise you it will last several days, if not a week. Okay, now for our shadow color, I want to get one more color out here. We've just about covered everything I'd like to have, but I want to get a little bit of burnt sienna. I like using those reds mixed in our cooler colors, as you're going to see in just a moment. Okay, now for this particular mixture, I'm going to take the blue, which has already got a lot of red in it. I know you can't see this on the camera too well, but we're going to add a little bit of alizarin crimson. Okay, and then again, now normally I might mention to you that as I did with the white, I should always mention this first thing. I started with the white paint and added color to the white paint. Now you notice how I'm taking white and adding it to the alizarin crimson ultramarine blue mixture. Now the problem with this, I really don't know how much white I need to make it as light as I want to make it. Now I'll divert from the normal way that I mix it, that is adding my color to white in this instance, because I know I want it to be a relatively medium to dark tone. I'm adding a little burnt umber to it because somehow or another the alizarin and the ultramarine blue will tend to make it a little bit too purple looking. That'll take a little bit of that out of there. Now I just want a cool color. Now look at how pretty, well you can't see it, but we've got the contrast of the extreme cool against the warm. Alright, now the rest of my colors I'm going to use relatively pure. However, I think I'm going to need a lot more in this particular range, so we'll just mix quite a bit more of it. But notice again, I'm keeping it in large masses. This is where people make their mistake. Okay, now that's a little bit dark, as I figured it would be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a little bit more of my titanium white. I'm going to put it out there like that. And This is in the acrylic titanium white. Now you can see right on the screen there, it's beginning to lighten up considerably already. So what I've essentially got is kind of a middle tone here, which will work very fine. Now I'm going to dilute this quite a bit when I paint it. Okay, and then lastly, I'd like to have burnt umber and ultramarine blue primarily, more blue than brown. And I'll put a little red in it just to enhance it a little bit. And this is going to give me almost a black. Now later, to get the strong dark I want to get, I'm going to go ahead and use the black. Now before we go any further, what got me started on this, if I can lay my hands on it real quickly. Let's pull this back like this. And we're going to take this all the way back up to the size that we want to work it. And here's our palette. I'll move it over to the side. Now you won't be seeing that anymore. Now this is the last painting, I should say, that I did in this particular medium. It was a French quarter scene. And I used it for my Christmas card. Now you can't probably see it too well, but there's snow on the ground in here. Just something I did for fun. And you're wondering, well, how did that look Christmas enough? Well, I have portable wreaths that I put on these things, okay? Now that made it look a little bit more Christmas. Now, when Christmas is over, I just pull the wreath off and I'll make a kit out of this, and some of you will have an opportunity to paint it. Now this was done exactly the same way as what you're getting ready to see. Okay. Now let me put this on pause while I move things around a little bit. Now I'm just going to take water as if I was doing this like a watercolor. I'm using a brush. It's a 1-inch Grumbacher brush. It's called the Golden Edge, number 4622. However, what I like about it is it's quite firm, and I think gives you a lot more body to move your acrylic around. Now notice I'm going to wet this just like I was doing a watercolor. Now I'm going to depart quite a bit from the photograph, simply because the photograph has a lot of reflected light, and it really is somewhat limited in terms of composition. In fact, what the photograph has is somewhat of a violet looking color towards the bottom, getting lighter, and more of the Naples yellow at the top. But for my purposes, remember, my primary reason for the background, and I never get I should say, forget this particular thing, having painted for over almost 40 years now. It's very easy to forget a center of interest. And if you begin with your center of interest, make everything secondary, make your statement clear. That's what I hope to do at the end of this. So for my purposes, I'm going to start with the darker colors at the top, getting lighter as we go towards the bottom. Okay, now that's going to be wet enough. I'll be continuing to wet it. Now I'm going to start with my lighter color. Now what you're going to notice, first of all, let's see, the water's giving me a little bit of glare. Let's see if we can tilt this up a little bit. Get rid of a little bit of that glare. I've got some up here, but I think for the most part we've eliminated it. Maybe I can do this just a little bit more. Okay. Actually, what would be, okay, that was my lamp creating some of that, so maybe I can come back up to this one. Nope. Okay. Now I think we've eliminated most of that. Now, of course, you can't see this too easily down here, but I wanted to have this rather subdued. Now that shows up as a very nice Naples yellow on here, okay? Now I'm going to kind of go up a little bit higher. It's very, very neutral, and will blend itself as well as complement the colors I'm getting ready to put on it. Now up here I'm not worried about the Naples, it's going to be so dark, but under here I'm going to have a lot of reflected light, and it was kind of a column that this set on. Okay, now that's enough for what I would like to have right now. Okay, now I'm going to go to my middle tone. Okay, now it does have a little bit of a lavender effect to it. Now notice first of all that as I paint it on there, I'm mixing it and diluting it in a way that the ink lines are coming through the bottom of it. Now here I only want a lighter tone of this at the top. Okay, now as I bring it down, now it looks kind of opaque right now, but as I work it a little bit more, it's going to dilute itself. Now I don't want the yellow to come through totally, and I plan to dilute it like this. Now you have to understand there's an amount or a degree of experimentation that you go through when you're doing something like this. You have to understand it and not be afraid of it. Because if you think, I know what I'm doing right now, you've got a lot, you've got another thought coming to you, because I really don't know what I'm doing. But I have a pretty good idea. I just don't know how it's going to come out. Now notice what I like about the acrylic, I can come along here with this color, and notice I can go right along that line. And it'll stay pretty well without running. Now that's the difference in using the illustration board. Because now notice as this is dried, you can't see it too well on here, but you can see the ink lines coming through very well now. Okay, now I've got a fairly good middle tone effect like I wanted in here. Now I'll come down to the bottom. I may want to go ahead and bring this all the way down now. Now don't think that what's under there is not coming through. Now with acrylic you can do it like an oil. Now what I love about this medium is that as it's going into different drying stages, I'm going to continue to get different effects with it. Now you probably can't see this too well. I'll come back along this way, and just like an oil painting, now it's out of consistency, and I know when it gets there that I can work it to where I can just get it just about as smooth as a watercolor, even though it's transparent. Now I'm going to come up at the top, and there are areas up here I know that I want to be extremely dark. However, I want more alizarin crimson in there, and I'm going to lighten it up just a little bit. Now, what I'm doing here, just to show you, I'm adding the alizarin, just like I was doing an oil painting, taking a little bit of white, and I'm adding the white to it. You see? And I'm kind of getting the mixture that I'd like to have. Now that's a little bit too light, but mixed with the other, it's going to begin to give me a little bit more of what I'm looking for. Now, at some point in time, this is going to begin to start drying. I can already feel it. This is what makes a lot of people panic. Conversely, this is when I feel like you can begin to work acrylic at its max, and that's why I decided to go ahead and record this for you. Because there's so many misconceptions about it. Now notice I've got pretty nice tone here, going from a middle tone. It's a little bit darker. Let's see if that'll give you a truer picture. Well, not really. I still am fighting the glare, but you'll just have to wing it with me. Now I'm going to go to my strong dark. Come up at the top. Notice those nice clean edges you can get with it. Now again, I'm going to blend this out. I have a reason for it. Now where I went over the line just now, later on I'll take a little bit of lighter paint, come back, you won't even tell it. Now, in fact, I'll just show you real quickly how I'll handle something like that. Now the rest of it is in a state of drying. That's fine. That's exactly what I want it to do. Okay, now notice I'm going to take just some clear water, and I know this is dried enough to where I can just come back and do something like this. Now, while this is still rather wet, I know I want this particular edge to be somewhat darker. And I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now I just re-wet that at that moment. I love this overlapping that you can do, and I want this to be somewhat darker, closer to this edge. Now later you're going to find out as it dries I can come back, but notice if I wanted to come in and just blend the edges together smoothly, I can take my brush and just do it like an oil, you see, even though it's very transparent, very much like a watercolor. Okay, now I have to make some decisions on this, which I'm going to make right now. One of them is that at the top of this object it gets extremely dark, and there's a wall. And let's see if I can do this for you the way I'd like to. So I'm going to take a little bit of the mixture of the ultramarine blue burnt umber and I'm going to start coming down like this. Pick up that wall. Now you can see it immediately begin to get a lot darker. Now where I feel like I need more black, I'm going to go ahead and put it in there. Now some of this I've got a little thick, so it doesn't matter. Notice I'm just using that brush and I'm stroking it all the way down. And what this is essentially going to be is the darker wall, which I'd like to stand out. Now I'm kind of pushing it in some of the areas by the flowers here. I'm not really sure what it's going to do when it dries, but I think it'll stand out, and I'll risk it. If not, I'll just go ahead and now I'm getting a little too dark at the base. Now watch how easy this is to work. I want it to recede a little bit, but I didn't want it to be quite that dark, so look at how I can just come back and pick it right up. Now see, the nice thing about this, see I'm picking up some of my color. Now add more water to it, you see. Now it's diluting it a little bit too much. It gives me actually something a little bit closer to the effect that I would like. Now remember, I'm only putting in a background to be utilized for my, I'm going to get a little bit blacker up here. Now I'm going to go a little bit more opaque. However, I like that. A little bit more red in it. And I want it, as I get towards the top, to dilute itself. So I'll just come in with a little stronger contrasting color. Now again, when this all dries, I have a lot of options. Let's bring that around there just a little bit. Now the wonderful thing about it, as it dries, I'm just going to be able to go over it very opaquely. And see here, it reaches a point that you've pretty well got your color mixed on there. There's not a whole lot that you can do with it, but there's a lot that can be done when it dries totally. So rather than taking a chance on losing what I have, let's just bring it down like that. Now notice if I go over that a little bit, I already know that this is dried enough. I can just lift it right back up again. But if it didn't, it would not matter, because I could just come right in. Now I know when it gets to a point that you notice how I'm picking it up. You have to reach a point like oils where you realize it's the point of no return, and you have to just kind of let it, unless you want to come in and work in some stronger colors like this. You just have to let it more or less dry on its own now. It bothers me to have this little streak right here. I think I'm just going to fuse all of that together. A little bit more at the base of it. Actually, I don't like that ending too abruptly. If I knew what he was doing right now, it would be a big help. Now again, I know that when this dries, it's going to be a lot more transparent. One thing I don't want is a definite line. And one thing I do want is to have more of a receding area over here. Now this, if you'll notice, is almost totally dry. Just add a little bit of water to it. There's not a whole lot you can do about the drying situation except let it dry. And this frightens a lot of people. Now I know if I should lose some of the lines up here, I've got enough that I can pick it up. Now, before I leave here, as I mentioned, for whatever reason, I like to work in a little bit of this burnt sienna. I may wash all of it out later, but the burnt sienna or the red, either one, I think warms the painting up, particularly in these cooler colors. Now, it may look a little bit of a mess right now, but you'll find out that as I move it along, well, let's bring this down just a little bit more. See, this is all totally dry down here. This makes it very effective, because now this is one of the real pluses of this medium. Now I'm blending it, smoothing it out, moving color around, doing this very much like a watercolor, very transparently now. Whereas before I didn't have it exactly the right tone that I wanted it, now I do. And I'm still in control of the ink work to where it's coming through transparently and doing what I want it to do. Let's get a little bit more of the dark in here. Blend our reds in a little bit more at the top. No, let's just do it a little bit like that and not be afraid of it. Now, I do know I want this to be somewhat darker. So now that it's completely dry and I know what I'm dealing with, now as you can see, this is going to be the majority of the painting. You see, and I can just come right against that edge, and notice I don't lose it like I would lose it in a watercolor. A lot of advantages to this. Okay, I think it's to a point where I could go ahead and let it dry. I think I've got enough of the effect that I would like to have for my flowers and whatever. I might later choose to put some of the area behind this particular section a little bit darker, but for now I think we'll just leave it like it is. Now that our painting is totally dry and we're beginning the next portion of our painting, I'd like to point out to you that it's been a couple of days since I painted. Now, some of this acrylic is a little bit spongy. Now, what I could have done if I had possibly known at what time I'd be coming back to work on this, there is a plastic container that you can buy. Runs about $14. that's just like a Tupperware piece, and you put your palette in there, take a little rag or a paper towel, moisten, stick it in it with the paint and the palette, and then you cover your top up and it seals it almost totally airtight. And I've seen cases where a week later people have been able to come out and use the paint fresh. But my particular philosophy on this is I really like to use fresh paint out of the tube. I don't mean to not be conservative with paint or whatever. I've certainly known what it was to at some point in my career to really have to watch everything very carefully and whatever, but you just learn, like so many people do when they practice a trade over a period of time, that there are ways to do it expediently that may cost a little bit more, but in the long run it saves you a lot more time and money and effort, which really there's a cost in your time whether you realize it or not also. So with this in mind, I might mention that whether it's an oil painting or an acrylic, I never throw my palettes away. Now, what most people are afraid of when they do something like this is, say for instance, this particular color or this color, they're afraid that possibly, or even like what I mixed here to make this Naples looking yellow, they're just afraid that there's a possibility they may not be able to come back and mix it perfectly, and they want everything to be consistent. Well, I think it's a lot more interesting to have a different color actually. And I might just mention to you that when you get enough confidence, you'll understand that as you attempt to mix colors, don't be afraid of coming up with something a little bit different. You may discover something that you've never done before, and you'll never do it if you don't try it. So don't become a person possessed by the attitude that they have to have enough paint like you buy at Sherwin-Williams to have it exactly the same color to fix the painting. I think, or complete the painting. I think it adds a lot more interest to it if you actually maybe deviate from your original pigment and make it a little bit different, and you might discover something new that's never been done before. Okay, with this in mind, I tore that particular palette sheet off, and with this in mind now, we're going to begin with our next area that I'm going to be working on. And notice I just put fresh paint out. Now this stuff is less than $5 a tube, a lot of it, gigantic tubes, so it's very inexpensive. Now, let's take a moment and we'll look at the portion that we're going to begin to work on. Now you notice now that the water is not evident, it's dried completely. I have some relatively strong darks up in here. I'm very pleased with this part of it. Now, how dark do I want to make it? Well, so many people don't understand that you can really define this for yourself as you go through a painting. The way that I'm going to do this, I'm taking the darkest area. Now you're not going to see this too clearly, but the darkest area in this painting is going to be in the door. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint my door in. I'm going to mix the colors to do that. And once I paint the door in, it's going to pretty well set the tones for the rest of the painting, and then I'll know exactly how dark I want to make it. It's like behind here, maybe up in the corner, or something like that. So with that in mind, let's just go back to mixing a little bit of pigment. You can't see this too well out here. Let me mention the colors to you. We've got cadmium yellow, burnt umber, alizarin crimson, raw sienna, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and we have some lamp black. Now remember, acrylic is the only medium that I do use the lamp black in, and also pastel, simply because you can't get a strong dark without it. Okay, so we want the door to be really dark. Now what I love about this acrylic, I'm going to start with my burnt umber, take a little bit of black and add it to it. Now let me make sure this is my black. Yes, it is. Okay. Now, I always like to add that little bit of ultramarine blue and maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson. I might add a lot of black to it, a lot more brown before I'm through with it, but I really do like to have a little color in those dark areas. So let's take a little bit more of the brown, a lot more of the black. Okay, now, normally I always mention to you that you should start by mixing your color and adding it to white to lighten it, but in this case I really know that I don't want this to be too much lighter, so I'm going to take a little bit of white and put it in it. I'm not trying to make a light tone or get a particular tone right now. I'm really just trying to get something that's not absolutely solid black. So that's sufficient. And the nice thing about this, when I put it on, I can add white to it while it's wet and change it. It's given us, you can't see it, it's given a nice brownish gray. That's exactly what I was looking for. And then, excuse me, while it's still wet, I'll add the black and ultramarine blue and burnt umber if necessary. Okay. Now, with that in mind, we'll leave this like this. Let's move this over here, and we'll go back to the actual painting itself. Now, I'll start with a relatively small brush, and I'll tell you why. Let's see what this looks like. I would like for the, let me just check one thing real quickly. Okay. I'm just going to start here so I don't lose my line. Of course, you're getting a little glare. It's a hard thing to be able to figure out because of the water that I've got on this, so I'm going to mix it a little bit lighter. Now there is a line here. I could keep it, but I'm just going to go right up to it since I pretty well know what I'm doing in this area. Now I'm getting a lot of glare. Let's see, if I lift that up slightly, I eliminate a lot of that on the camera. So let me just pause for a moment and see what I can come up with on this. I'd better, for the sake of the camera as well as myself, I'm getting exactly what I want. Now notice I'm going to leave a little bit of a light area here. You may not see that on there. And I think with this in mind, I might just drop this down just a little bit where we can observe a little bit more detail on it. Okay. Wrong way. Let's come back this way now. And I think when you can even see how neatly those lines are standing out on the door. Okay. Go back to our painting now, and I'm painting actually around the flowers. If there's any stems or whatever, I'm going to paint around that. Now, when I mixed that color, I had no idea what it was going to be like when I finished, but I can see now it's just about what I wanted. Now notice, I could paint over the flowers or some of the edges. It doesn't really matter because remember, the big thing in acrylic that makes it so nice is the fact that when I get further enough along in this and paint the flowers in, I can paint white over black as easily as I can paint black over white. So nothing's really cast in stone as far as what we have to do. Okay. Bring it down like this a little bit further. And likewise like this. So I'm actually filling this in pretty accurately. Later I will come back and pretty well paint my flowers in very freely because the covering part of it is so nice. But you can see I'm leaving a lot of the light areas coming through there now. Again, it's a real positive advantage to the particular medium. Alright, now at the top, I'll just continue. What we've got is the dual frame here. So I'm going to just continue it the same way. And may not be totally accurate, as I mentioned earlier. That's not as far as where the flowers are and this kind of thing, but it doesn't matter because we'll come back. And I might mention to you, notice I painted a fairly large amount of this pigment. That's hard to see on here, but I painted it in a fairly large amount. Kept it in a large space. Maybe this will help some of you. Kept a large amount of it mixed together at one time so that as I paint it, I don't have to worry about that drying. I could paint with that as long as I wanted to, probably until I use the pigment up and not have anything to worry about. Okay, now this door is divided in the middle, so we'll just come on down like this now. And I notice that in the division it probably needs to be a little bit wider. So I'm going to just extend this out a little bit behind the flowers. And then I might give the flowers a little bit more texture than what I had with just the plain ink by itself. Okay, now as we come down on the flower, I think we can still see some of this in here. So I'm creating a lot of the things that I'm doing now in reverse. It's wonderful with the way that this medium dries so quickly, and then being able to use water instead of other mediums. I'm really painting this. It has the same feel and the opacity that oils has, so it's really a lot of fun to do it. But the only difference that I think is a plus for using acrylic, it just won't do what oils will do, is the fact that you have a very quick drying time, meaning you paint something on and just a few minutes later you're ready to come back and put the final touches on it. Okay, now as we come down to the base of this, we have a little bit of an unusual situation because your door is not real clear. So since I'm going to be doing this through the actual railing itself, I pretty well know where I'm at on this thing, so I'm going to just start filling it in. I think this is a real plus. I don't have to worry if it's not perfectly painted in here as far as if I go in the line or outside of the line or whatever. I think what I'm doing this just because I like to keep it as neatly as possible. But I know that when I come back and, for instance, I paint the railing over or whatever else I paint in it, it's going to be very simple to just come back with that particular color and cover it up. But still, I like to go by the my philosophy on it is I'd like to get it as close to completed as I can, and that way you don't have to worry about straightening lines up and doing a lot of alterations on it later. Okay, now notice as I come to the base of it, now this is going to be the door all the way across the base of it. So with that in mind, I'll take my, make sure we're looking at the right area on the camera here, I'll take my it's taped at the base of it. Now remember this. So I'll take my mixture, and I'm only going to have to be worried about this first line. So let's just come in like this. Now when I pick the other side up, I have a very nice, neat, sharp line there. Okay. Turn it back around this way. Make sure we're in the right playing field. Okay. Now we'll just come along the base. Now again, I'm just going to follow the lines that I'm painting. I'm not going to try to paint in reverse. I'll show you what I'm talking about when I say that in just a moment. Okay, I'll just fill this in a little bit. It's not really that necessary. Okay, we'll come across here. Now this is where I know the door ends. Let's see if I've got that in on the camera. Okay. The door is going to end about right here. Now here I'll stop. I'll turn it around. And again, what's nice is the area that I painted a minute ago is already dry. But you notice, if you could see it in real life, it really has a lot of brown in it. It's not extremely dark. But it's going to set the tone in terms of how darkly I would like to make everything else in the painting, you see, and that's the part that I think is critical. All right, now again, I'm going to come, notice how I'm coming across this way. I went a little bit too far there. Now I'm going to do all the things that are on the right side. See, I never like to paint, for instance, I don't want to paint this side where I really can't see on the other side of the brush as far as what's going on. So I'm going to paint this side all the way across. And you'll learn with time and experience that you really can learn to save a lot of time and effort and whatever simply by doing this the way that I'm doing it. Now here, it's very simple to come back around, and I'll just, without a lot of trouble, I can fill in that particular area. But notice how I'm going to just work just one section at a time. I'll come back and do this again. Now what's neat about this, as opposed to if I was doing it in watercolor, I'd probably do it somewhat differently. But the primary thing is with those nice ink lines in there, everything stays where it's supposed to stay. Turn it over again one more time, make sure it's on the camera. Okay, now we're going to come across the top here. I don't want too much water. Fill this in. Okay, make sure we can see it. Okay, notice I'll come across here, around this way. Now I'll also come across this bottom line. Now you notice the nice thing about the acrylic as opposed to the watercolor, since I'm painting it opaquely, I've got the color pretty well pre-mixed. It's going to dry very close to what's under it. That's an advantage you have over watercolor, as you know. Alright, the amount of water doesn't play as much of a factor when you get the pigment mixed very thickly. Okay, now you notice I've pretty well got the door painted in there the way that I was looking for it. Let's move this all back just a tiny bit. Alright, so with that in mind, I'll just continue along the same way. And ironically, you never know how this is going to work when you first start it, but it's working exactly the same color that I want. Now just so that I can clarify this for you a little bit more, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Here I have my railing, that's the line for the door, and I don't really want to paint it in reverse like I was showing you a moment ago. I want my railing to stay relatively sharp. And believe me, it takes a little bit more time maybe to do it this way in the beginning, but when you're through, it works so much nicer for you. Okay, now I may want to go to a smaller brush for some of these other areas. But let's just try it and see what happens, because see, I have to paint both sides of it at one time. We'll just try it. It seems like it's working pretty well. Come back on the inside also. Okay, likewise we have a little triangular shape here we want to keep. Another area on the inside down here. Okay, now this is giving me exactly what I want. It's making the area behind the flowers and the railing recede exactly like I would like it to. Now here, let's try this. Okay, that's working very nicely in terms of some of this may not be a little even. I'll just touch it up a little bit. But I think we'll just let that dry some more and see what we come up with. So notice I'm just experimenting here. It's working very well. Sometimes you get the flow going where it really does work nicely. So in this case, I was able to come down and keep and finish the entire thing relatively easily. So we're doing it like this in reverse, and it's working very well. So we'll just keep doing it like this. And across the bottom. So you never know when that's going to work, when it isn't going to work. But I think that's going to be very sufficient for what we're trying to do. Alright, we'll come on back up here again now. See again, those ink lines, you never have to worry about the misket. You don't have to worry about peeling up anything. Again, it seems to be working very nicely on both sides. As long as it's doing that, I'll continue to do it. Now, a lot of this is going to be repetitious, so I'm going to turn the camera off for a few moments, and we'll go ahead and maybe finish this part without repeating this unnecessarily on the camera for you. Now, before I go any further with you on this, I'd like to show you something that I'll come back to later. I've had it on pause, but this top part of the area here is actually part of my window, and I covered it up by mistake. I'm going to show you one of the nice things about acrylic you're going to love is how easily you can come back and touch that up without any problem. Okay, we'll just continue right along now with our other large areas. Come back in just a second. Alright, we've reached the point now where you can begin to see what somewhat intrigued me about this in the beginning is the fact that we have an abstract design that is beginning to show up with the pattern in the railings, and also with the shadows actually covering the or outlining the flowers very nicely. So whenever we come back now and really put our lighter tones in here and so forth, it's really going to make a big difference. Now, I just noticed this is definitely an accident over here. I won't tease you about that. That's where I had some of that pigment go on there by accident, but you're going to find out in this case when I paint over it, you won't even know it. Okay, we're going now to the last portion of the door, which let's see how this is going to work now. Okay, to make sure you study these things. It's a lot like paint by number at this point. All right. Now I'll just come back in like this. Fill that in. Rest of my door this way. Because remember now, this is all the wooden part. And as you can see in the moment, the rest of it will be window panes. Relatively large window panes, I might add. Or door panes, I should say. Now, I want this line over here to be pretty straight, so I'm going to come in like this, touch this up, and I might, in this case, since the line is rather lengthy at the top, now here it doesn't make that much difference. I'm not filling in that much space, but the top part of it, I think I'll stop and turn my board around like this and fill this in. Okay. Keep this as sharp as possible. Now this is going to be up against that wall, so this will work very well. Now that completes my door. It gives me a very good idea in terms of what I'm looking for in this particular pattern or area that I'm doing. I should say it completes my door at the bottom and at the top part of it. Now as we come up here, there's another door frame at the top and a window and this kind of thing, so we'll just stop and put this on pause for a moment. I'd like to point out to you that I know again you can't see the size of this, maybe if I turn it sideways, but I've been painting now for quite some time and I have a very large amount of this pigment that's still there. And notice this may be drying a little bit, but even this, if you keep wetting, it is staying relatively moist, you see? And that's my argument against using a lot of things such as agents that will retard the drying and this kind of thing. I just personally like to keep things as close to the original as I can. Now what we've got at the top up here, okay, is the top of the door frame. It's going to have a window in it. Okay, so here we have the basic door. Now I'm going to come across here. Now there's a line, you can't see it too well, but so I don't lose my definition, I'm going to leave a little space in here just to indicate it's going to be a little bit of the light purple. And it's going to indicate where I might come back in and fill it in with a line later. I don't really know what I'm going to do on that yet, but okay, now we have a flower area up here. Let's just paint around the flowers first. Now, it's a little hard making this out, but then again, you know, what difference does it make? Okay, we'll come across like this. Again, I'll leave my little light area between it, showing some more of my flowers here. Okay, and then this is going to primarily be flowers over here, but see, I purposely didn't go right up against the edge here because I would like for this to really not cross that line and to stand out very distinctly on its own. Okay, now let's see if we can do something with this light. I'm getting a little glare now that's a little bit of a problem at this angle. Let's see if we move it a little bit lower. Okay, that helps a little bit. Okay, now I left my little line in between. You can barely see it, indicating where the area ends. Now what I've got is essentially is a door frame. Now I may have to rethink this just a little here. Let's see exactly what my door. Now bringing this a little closer, and let's see if we can do something with the glare. I stopped the video at the moment here where you saw the top of the door, then the top of the frame. What I essentially did was completed the frame around the top, and this is the frame for the window. Now I brought this up relatively close because what I would like you to see is, you notice the lines here. I've got the frame coming out, then there's a facial board. There's another line over here for the wall. I think we can possibly move it over and see that. Now what I'd like you to understand with that is the fact that when these lines get a little bit difficult to see, particularly when they're straight angles, it's very easy to come back in and fill them in like I did. Okay, so I just went back over that again, and I might mention while I've got this close up, this is a Sharpie ultrafine point. It's a permanent marker, meaning that water will not dilute it and dissolve it or whatever, so that's what I used on that. Now, while we've got this close up, let's see just how this will work out, because what I did, I want to show you how easily this works and how nicely it works. I forgot one of the facial boards on the, see if we can get enough room in here to get it in there. I forgot one of the facial boards. No, we'll have to possibly do something else on that. There we go. Which I know the facial board is approximately about this thick. That's close enough. Now remember, this is the front of it. It came right at the end of that railing. I'm going to move this down. It's going to be about the thickness of my facial board. And what I'm going to actually have here is a line coming down. I'll make it just about where it comes out on that railing again. Now, since I forgot this, I'll just simply take my time, make sure I line it up correctly, and put it back in again. Now, not only will I have the facial board itself, but we'll just complete it all the way down through here. But this is actually where you see it attached to the mortar. And this is an interesting thing to study things like this architecturally. You know, a lot of people don't like architectural things. They don't like the disciplines, but you have to paint it. And if you'll notice, like that little edge is going to be very important. You can see where I drew those lines in. That's going to be the extension of this facial board over here. And where it becomes very important, actually it's up here and across here, where it becomes as important is that you're going to keep that little light edge when you paint it later. So that'll help you a little bit on that part of it. Now, let's possibly go back up with this just a little, where we can see the entire window and the door and the balcony and pretty much the entire composition. Okay, now I've got a piece of tape at the bottom of my board to keep it on here. What I'd like to study for just a moment, I'll mention to you, I should say, for just a moment, is the fact that I have a light source that's coming in over here from the left, primarily. Okay, now it may have, may not be exactly that right, but what it gives you is an effect that this entire area behind here is going to be somewhat darker, and then you get a little bit of a lighter wall over here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little bit of the mixture that I've been using, or maybe I'll stop and just use the plain black and mix some blue and some brown with it. Okay, and I'm doing this on my palette. First thing I want to do is I want to define a couple of areas. Now, there is somewhat of a, you'll see this on the finished painting, there's somewhat of a column here that this archway sits on, and I want it to be relatively dark behind there. So let's start it. This is going to be my blacker color. I'm coming across it with it's ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and black. No white added to this now. Come back up like this and around, go right up against my archway, and really define this the way I wanted to define it in the beginning. Now this is where you learn to use this somewhat like a watercolor. Let's see if this is very, maybe I can just bring it a little bit closer. Let's see. That's far enough away. And maybe we can pick this up a little bit better. Now you won't see too much in the values on it, but I'm actually coming in with this darker tone. I'm going to get it pretty solid up against that archway. You'll see it more when this all dries. But I may not necessarily want to keep it extremely dark coming away from here, so I'll just mix a little water with it now. And I might take a little bit of a lighter color, put a little red in it. I'm just mixing a variety of colors, more concerned about values than anything. I'm going to lightly wash this over here now where it doesn't show up, it can't show up on the painting. You possibly might see it on the finished piece. but I've got a lot of what's under here that's coming through. And I'm going to continue this little lighter wash all the way down just to give a gradation where you can begin to see where this wall ends and the board picks up. Now we'll come back up at the top again like this with some of our darker tone. Now, I've got some of this is wet, so it's giving me a chance to blend it in very nicely. Okay, that's got a nice dark shadow behind that post. That's what I wanted. I'll bring it down just a little bit further, and I'll come back and pick this other part up later, because what I'm essentially trying to do is concentrate on one area at a time. So let's come across here. Now remember, in areas that you're not sure about, I am going to have a colored copy furnished with whatever, for those of you that might do this. And then in addition, I'll have the line drawing that's going to bring it out clearly. Now I'm putting a little bit more red in my gray mixture to break the color up a little bit, and coming across here now and creating a little bit more value with it. Now, that's going to give me pretty much the dark that I want behind that, and this is going to make a lot more sense to you a little bit later on. Okay, now as I go a little bit further with this, I know that the underside of my area that I'm working on, get a little bit more of the black in it. The underside of this ledge, okay, here's the outside facial board, the ledge, then we begin the door. I'm going to want that just a little bit darker towards the outside edge of it. So let's just pick that up now. Now notice how clear this archway is beginning to stand out. I want that to be extremely dark behind it. That is the idea. So we'll just mix, I'm just mixing this on the side. Some of the black, the blue, and the brown, mixing it relatively thickly. Okay, and I'll start off with somewhat of a line here. Now, what I want is an edge. No, true. Some of the areas like this might be a little bit easier in watercolor, but get a little bit of glare. Let's see if we can do something about that. Okay. I'm going to come right along this edge. Now let me show you one of the things I really like about this. Talking about watercolor. So you couldn't get the watercolor to cover this nicely, I can tell you that right. Perfectly painted in here as far as if I go in the line or outside of the line or whatever. I think what I'm doing this just because I like to keep it as neatly as possible. But I know that when I come back and, for instance, I paint the railing over or whatever else I paint in it, it's going to be very simple to just come back with that particular color and cover it up. But still, I like to go by the my philosophy on it is I'd like to get it as close to completed as I can, and that way you don't have to worry about straightening lines up and doing a lot of alterations on it later. Okay, now notice as I come to the base of it, now this is going to be the door all the way across the base of it. So with that in mind, I'll take my, make sure we're looking at the right area on the camera here. I'll take my, it's taped at the base of it. Now remember this. So I'll take my mixture, and I'm only going to have to be worried about this first line. So let's just come in like this. Now when I pick the other side up, I have a very nice, neat, sharp line there. Okay, turn it back around this way. Make sure we're in the right playing field. Okay. Now we'll base. Now again, I'm just going to follow the lines that I'm painting. I'm not going to try to paint in reverse. I'll show you what I'm talking about when I say that in just a moment. Okay, I'll just fill this in a little bit. It's not really that necessary. Okay, we'll come across here. Now this is where I know the door ends. Let's see if I've got that in on the camera. Okay. The door is going to end about right here. Now here I'll stop. I'll turn it around. And again, what's nice is the area that I painted a minute ago is already dry. But you notice, if you could see it in real life, it really has a lot of brown in it. It's not extremely dark. But it's going to set the tone in terms of how darkly I would like to make everything else in the painting, you see, and that's the part that I think is critical. All right, now again, I'm going to come, notice how I'm coming across this way. I went a little bit too far there. Now I'm going to do all the things that are on the right side. See, I never like to paint, for instance, I don't want to paint this side where I really can't see on the other side of the brush as far as what's going on. So I'm going to paint this side all the way across. And you'll learn with time and experience that you really can learn to save a lot of time and effort and whatever, is simply by doing this the way that I'm doing it. Now here, it's very simple to come back around, and I'll just, without a lot of trouble, I can fill in that particular area. But notice how I'm going to just work just one section at a time. Come back and do this again. Now what's neat about this, as opposed to if I was doing it in watercolor, I'd probably do it somewhat differently. But the primary thing is with those nice ink lines in there, everything stays where it's supposed to stay. Turn it over again one more time, make sure it's on the camera. Okay, now we're going to come across the top here. Don't want too much water. Fill this in. Okay, make sure we can see it. Okay, and notice I'll come across here, around this way. Now I'll also come across this bottom line. Now you notice the nice thing about the acrylic as opposed to the watercolor, since I'm painting it opaquely, I've got the color pretty well pre-mixed. It's going to dry very close to what's under it, and that's an advantage you have over watercolor, as you know. Alright, the amount of water doesn't play as much of a factor when you get the pigment mixed very thickly. Okay, now you notice I've pretty well got the door painted in there the way that I was looking for it. Let's move this all back just a tiny bit. Alright, so with that in mind, I'll just continue along the same way. And ironically, you never know how this is going to work when you first start it, but it's working exactly the same color that I want. Now just so that I can clarify this for you a little bit more, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Here I have my railing, that's the line for the door, and I don't really want to paint it in reverse like I was showing you a moment ago. I want my railing to stay relatively sharp. And believe me, it takes a little bit more time maybe to do it this way in the beginning, but when you're through, it works so much nicer for you. Okay. Now I may want to go to a smaller brush for some of these other areas, but let's just try it and see what happens, because see, I have to paint both sides of it at one time. We'll just try it. It seems like it's working pretty well. Come back on the inside also. Okay, likewise we have a little triangular shape here we want to keep. Another area on the inside down here. Okay, now this is giving me exactly what I want. It's making the area behind the flowers and the railing recede exactly like I would like it to. Now here, let's try this. Okay, that's working very nicely in terms of some of this may not be a little even. I'll just touch it up a little bit. But I think we'll just let that dry some more and see what we come up with. So notice I'm just experimenting here. It's working very well. Sometimes you get the flow going where it really does work nicely. So in this case, I was able to come down and keep and finish the entire thing relatively easily. So we're doing it like this in reverse, and it's working very well. So we'll just keep doing it like this. And across the bottom. So you never know when that's going to work, when it is going to work. but I think that's going to be very sufficient for what we're trying to do. Alright, we'll come on back up here again. Now, see again, those ink lines, you never have to worry about the misket. You don't have to worry about peeling up anything. Again, it seems to be working very nicely on both sides. As long as it's doing that, I'll continue to do it. Now, a lot of this is going to be repetitious, so I'm going to turn the camera off for a few moments, and we'll go ahead and maybe finish this part without repeating this unnecessarily on the camera for you. Now, before I go any further with you on this, I'd like to show you something that I'll come back to later. I've had it on pause, but this top part of the area here is actually part of my window, and I covered it up by mistake. I'm going to show you one of the nice things about acrylic you're going to love is how easily you can come back and touch that up without any problem. Okay, we'll just continue right along now with our other larger areas. Come back in just a second. Alright, we've reached the point now where you can begin to see what somewhat intrigued me about this in the beginning is the fact that we have an abstract design that is beginning to show up with the pattern in the railings, and also with the shadows actually covering the or outlining the flowers very nicely. So whenever we come back now and really put our lighter tones in here and so forth, it's really going to make a big difference. Now, I just noticed this is definitely an accident over here. I won't tease you about that. That's where I had some of that pigment go on there by accident, but you're going to find out in this case when I paint over it, you won't even know it. Okay, we're going now to the last portion of the door, which let's see how this is going to work now. Okay, to make sure you study these things, it's a lot like paint by number at this point. Alright, now I'll just come back in like this, fill that in, rest of my door this way, because remember now this is all the wooden part, and as you can see in the moment, the rest of it will be window panes, relatively large window panes I might add, or door panes I should say. Now I want this line over here to be pretty straight, so I'm going to come in like this, touch this up, and I might in this case, since the line is rather lengthy at the top, now here it doesn't make that much difference, I'm not filling in that much space, but the top part of it I think I'll stop and turn my board around like this and fill this in. Okay. Keep this as sharp as possible. Now this is going to be up against that wall, so this will work very well. Now that completes my door. It gives me a very good idea in terms of what I'm looking for in this particular pattern or area that I'm doing. I should say it completes my door at the bottom and at the top part of it. Now as we come up here, there's another door frame at the top and a window and this kind of thing, so we'll just stop and put this on pause for a moment. I'd like to point out to you that I know again you can't see the size of this, maybe if I turn it sideways, but I've been painting now for quite some time and I have a very large amount of this pigment that's still there. And notice this may be drying a little bit, but even this, if you keep wetting it, is staying relatively moist, you see? And that's my argument against using a lot of things such as agents that will retard the drying and this kind of thing. I just personally like to keep things as close to the original as I can. Now what we've got at the top up here, okay, is the top of the door frame. It's going to have a window in it. Okay, so here we have the basic door. Now I'm going to come across here. Now there's a line, you can't see it too well, but so I don't lose my definition, I'm going to leave a little space in here just to indicate it's going to be a little bit of the light purple. And it's going to indicate where I might come back in and fill it in with a line later. I don't really know what I'm going to do on that yet, but okay, now we have a flower area up here. Let's just paint around the flowers first. Now, it's a little hard making this out, but then again, you know, what difference does it make? Okay, we'll come across like this. Again, I'll leave my little light area between it, showing some more of my flowers here. Okay, and then this is going to primarily be flowers over here, but see, I purposely didn't go right up against the edge here because I would like for this to really not cross that line and to stand out very distinctly on its own. Okay, now let's see if we can do something with this light. I'm getting a little glare now that's a little bit of a problem at this angle. Let's see if we move it a little bit lower. Okay, that helps a little bit. Okay, now I left my little line in between. You can barely see it, indicating where the area ends. Now what I've got is essentially is a door frame. Now I may have to rethink this just a little here. Let's see exactly what my door. Now bringing this a little closer, and let's see if we can do something with the glare. I stopped the video at the moment here where you saw the top of the door, then the top of the frame. What I essentially did was completed the frame around the top, and this is the frame for the window. Now I brought this up relatively close because what I would like you to see is, you notice the lines here. I've got the frame coming out, then there's a facial board. There's another line over here for the wall. I think we can possibly move it over and see that. Now what I'd like you to understand with that is the fact that when these lines get a little bit difficult to see, particularly when they're straight angles, it's very easy to come back in and fill them in like I did. Okay, so I just went back over that again, and I might mention while I've got this close up, this is a Sharpie ultra fine point. It's a permanent marker, meaning that water will not dilute it and dissolve it or whatever, so that's what I used on that. Now while we've got this close up, let's see just how this will work out, because what I did, I want to show you how easily this works and how nicely it works. I forgot one of the facial boards on the see if we can get enough room in here to get it in there. I forgot one of the facial boards. No, we'll have to possibly do something else on that. There we go. Which I know the facial board is approximately about this thick. That's close enough. Now remember, this is the front of it. It came right at the end of that railing. I'm going to move this down. It's going to be about the thickness of my facial board. But what I'm going to actually have here is a line coming down. I'll make it just about where it comes out on that railing again. Now, since I forgot this, I'll just simply take my time, make sure I line it up correctly, and put it back in again. Now not only will I have the facial board itself, but we'll just complete it all the way down through here. But this is actually where you see it attached to the mortar. And this is an interesting thing to study things like this architecturally. You know, a lot of people don't like architectural things. They don't like the disciplines, but you have to paint it. And if you'll notice, like that little edge is going to be very important. You can see where I drew those lines in. That's going to be the extension of this facial board over here. And where it becomes very important, actually it's up here and across here, where it becomes as important is that you're going to keep that little light edge when you paint it later. So that'll help you a little bit on that part of it. Now, let's possibly go back up with this just a little, where we can see the entire window and the door and the balcony and pretty much the entire composition. Okay, now I've got a piece of tape at the bottom of my board to keep it on here. What I'd like to study for just a moment, I'll mention to you, I should say, for just a moment, is the fact that I have a light source that's coming in over here from the left, primarily. Okay, now it may have, may not be exactly that right, but what it gives you is an effect that this entire area behind here is going to be somewhat darker, and then you get a little bit of a lighter wall over here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little bit of the mixture that I've been using, or maybe I'll stop and just use the plain black and mix some blue and some brown with it. Okay, and I'm doing this on my palette. First thing I want to do is I want to define a couple of areas. Now, there is somewhat of a, you'll see this on the finished painting, there's somewhat of a column here that this archway sits on, and I want it to be relatively dark behind there. So let's start it. Now, this is going to be my blacker color. I'm coming across it with, it's ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and black. No white added to this now. Come back up like this and around, go right up against my archway, and really define this the way I wanted to define it in the beginning. Now this is where you learn to use this somewhat like a watercolor. Let's see if this is very, maybe I can just bring it a little bit closer. Let's see. That's far enough away. And maybe we can pick this up a little bit better. Now you won't see too much in the values on it, but I'm actually coming in with this darker tone. I'm going to get it pretty solid up against that archway, and you'll see it more when this all dries. But I may not necessarily want to keep it extremely dark coming away from here, so I'll just mix a little water with it now. And I might take a little bit of a lighter color, put a little red in it. I'm just mixing a variety of colors, more concerned about values than anything. I'm going to lightly wash this over here now where it doesn't show up, it can't show up on the painting. You possibly might see it on the finished piece, but I've got a lot of what's under here that's coming through. And I'm going to continue this little lighter wash all the way down just to give a gradation where you can begin to see where this wall ends and the board picks up. Now we'll come back up at the top again like this with some of our darker tone. Now I've got some of this is wet, so it's giving me a chance to blend it in very nicely. Okay, that's got a nice dark shadow behind that post. That's what I wanted. I'll bring it down just a little bit further, and I'll come back and pick this other part up later, because what I'm essentially trying to do is concentrate on one area at a time. So let's come across here. Now remember, in areas that you're not sure about, I am going to have a colored copy furnished with whatever, for those of you that might do this. And then in addition, I'll have the line drawing that's going to bring it out clearly. Now I'm putting a little bit more red in my grayer mixture to break the color up a little bit, and coming across here now and creating a little bit more value with it. Now that's going to give me pretty much the dark that I want behind that. Now this is going to make a lot more sense to you a little bit later on. Okay, now as I go a little bit further with this, I know that the underside of my area that I'm working on, get a little bit more of the black in it. The underside of this ledge, okay, here's the outside fascia board, the ledge, then we begin the door. I'm going to want that just a little bit darker towards the outside edge of it, so let's just pick that up now. Now notice how clear this archway is beginning to stand out. I want that to be extremely dark behind it. That is the idea. So we'll just mix, I'm just mixing this on the side, some of the black, the blue, and the brown, mixing it relatively thickly. And I'll start off with somewhat of a line here. Now, what I want is an edge. No, true. Some of the areas like this might be a little bit easier in watercolor, but get a little bit of glare. Let's see if we can do something about that. Okay. I'm going to come right along this edge. Now let me show you one of the things I really like about this. Talking about watercolor. See, you couldn't get the watercolor to cover this nicely. I can tell you that right now. Initially, you see. But as I bring it down, I'm just going to take a little plain water and add to the mixture I've already got and dilute it. Now I'm getting something with a little red in it, just something with a lot of different color. That's fine, because I want to show the transition from the really deep shadow. You can't see it too clearly on here because it's of the glare and whatever, but I'm softening that edge, getting a little bit lighter tone, and when it all covers, you're going to see that it'll probably give me just what I want. As far as the reflected light, you can kind of see it on here. It's a little bit defined, but it'll smooth itself out. So I'm getting the window pane, the door, adjust the door panel there, another part of the molding at the top. Then I'm going from the gradation from light to dark up here. And see if it looks like it's a little bit uneven. You know, you have so many flexibilities in this. You have to just be patient, learn to work the medium as the medium was intended to be worked. And you see it's starting to pick up a little bit. You have to watch that. How is it intended to be worked? However you want to work it, you see. But you can't go too far as mixing the adding water to it. After a certain point, it's going to begin to break up. So then if you want to darken it, you come back with more paint. But for what I want, this is going to be close enough, and I'll leave it. Now, the next area I feel that becomes a critical area, I'll flip this around like this. I want to get a wash now. So I'll just take a little bit of my color here. Just paint right over that. Now that may be a little bit too bright. I'll see when it dries. Let's try that and see what we come up with. Now again, some of the most difficult thing in doing this, as well as figuring it out, is the fact that you have to kind of build up these background areas and get them to do what you want them to do. My primary purpose is to make sure that whatever I come up with, what's going to be behind this foliage is going to be a lot darker than anything else in it. Now, with that in mind, I'd like to come down following the inside plane of the door frame. I like this to be considerably darker all the way down. Here's our frame right here. Okay, and again, just making sure that I have something on here that's going to make my flowers stand out a little bit more than they might have otherwise. Let's just do the same thing. You know, we have our frame on this side. Kind of lost some of the definition there a little bit. So we'll purposely shade this in slightly darker. There we go, picking it up again down here. And remember, this is that outer wall. You won't see all of this, unfortunately, too clearly, but If you'll just look at the finished product as I go along, I think you'll see it clearly. Now the one thing I didn't estimate, you can barely see this coming out a little bit nicer now. One thing I really didn't estimate on here, it's not a problem to me, is that it took a little bit more time to get this back area built up and whatever, but I think personally in the long run it's going to make it a much more attractive picture. Okay, now we're really about ready to where we're going to start coming back in and putting the flowers in and the other things to make it really stand out, so this will be a good breaking point. Now this is where you'll begin to see acrylic paper itself and time and effort and whatever. As I've gotten this to a certain point, on your TV as well as in real life, it's going to look a little bit, shall we say, a little bit dark and maybe pretty much a monotone situation. But what I like about it is I'm going to come back in, and again, remember, I'm purposely kind of filling this in as I go along as far as the composition goes, because it's relatively simple, and I just know that I want all of this pretty much subdued behind the flower pots. You see how already they're beginning to stand out so nicely, particularly in these darker areas. That's why I don't want to do too much more at this point. But now watch how easy it is. The problem I've got is towards the base of this, I'd like it to not be as flat. I'd like maybe this to be a little bit lighter in order that my, and maybe more evenly done, in order that my railings will stand out a little bit more clearly. So with that in mind, I'm going to take a little bit of the cadmium yellow and the raw sienna and the white. Now, if you'll get this right to the right consistency as far as pigment, water, and so forth, you can come back over this, believe it or not, and this is one of the real beauties. And that's a little bit too dark for what I want, too opaque I should say. So let's add a little bit of water to it. And I love the transitional thing you have here. It's too much pigment, we'll just thin it out. Now this looks like it's covering up everything, but it really isn't. So as I come up here, I'm just going to show some reflected light, and I'm going to dilute it as it goes up, much like a watercolor. Now this is the big difference. In a watercolor, you would have lost this already in certain areas by covering it up. Whereas with the acrylic, I'm able to transparently lighten it, get the particular effect that I want to have in there. And this was really one of the things I was hoping we could get into. Now even here, where it's relatively dark at the top, I can still blend that out just a little bit. Now I really wanted all of this area down here to begin to open up a little bit like that and not have as much definition on the lighter area. So I'm going to just come in and I'm going to go all the way across here now. Now what will surprise you is that this will dry lighter, it will dry nice and subdued. And again, I'm going to have lighter areas on the walls out here and whatever. So I want to make sure that I'm not totally losing my my reflected light. Now, watch how this works out so nicely. Okay, I like that so much. I'm going to turn this back around this way. And I know that I don't want to totally have the painting in the purples. But watch how I'm going to come back over this area. And I may only want it on one wall now as I go up higher, see? I'll start fading it. Now you have to play with this a little bit to get exactly the right consistency and, you know, to know what you're doing exactly. I don't really say that I'm at that point yet myself. It may come as a shock to some of you, but I go through this all the time. And And it may surprise you, but when you experiment, you try different things, which is what I'm really having a lot of fun doing, and I don't know if I want to do it if I can't experiment and have fun with it. Then this is part of the territory. I may not like any of it. If I don't, I'll just come back later and I'll just take it all back out again. No big deal. Okay, now coming up here, I've got the same thing. Remember, this is a white wall. See, and I like that little bit of a warm reflected light coming up from the bottom where it's not so much in shadow. I think it's going to give it some differences that I like. I'm going to come right back over this the same way. Notice I'm not affecting the darks too much. And I'll even do it somewhat up at the top, you see, because this is really going to kind of take care of some problem areas I was concerned about in the beginning. You notice how that just barely pulled that out a little bit. Now, where I think it's very significant is along this edge right here. I think I'm going to go to my number 4 brush. Now remember, we have the door frame. We're beginning to see the door frame now. Some of this may dry a little bit too light, too dark, whatever, but I have the option, if I'd like, to just come back in and rework it as much as I would like to rework it. So let's take the yellow, the raw sienna again, and the white. All right, now there's an edge here on the edge of the door frame I had mentioned to you earlier. That's a little bit too light. So let's just dilute it and tone it down a little bit. Now this is something that is going to remain constant, meaning that the entire door frame, except possibly for a little bit at the top. Now notice how easily I can cover that, but then as I get closer to the top and I want to begin to lose it, I'll just just blend it out like this. Now remember, keep in mind that this is going to dry considerably darker. Even though it's very opaque and it's light and whatever, it will dry a lot darker. Okay, now we'll hit a little bit in here and in here. And then down here we have the same thing again. It's not brought out too clearly, but we'll just go ahead and carry it all the way through. I can come back and ink that in again if I want to. Okay, but now notice how I'm starting to really get a little bit more continuity and everything. I'm still not too concerned about it. I'm not really worried about really how well it stands out, but I can play with things. Like for instance, right here, I might want to take a little bit of my lighter yellow, gray it down a little bit. Now this is where the window, edge of the window frame is at the top. I may want to come back and define that window just a little bit like that, and like that, and I find out that's all I need. Let's let that dry and see what that looks like. Here again is the edge I can see at the top, and that's where your door frame would go into it, come back down like this, maybe the same way again. The point I'm trying to point out to you is to consider all of the variables that you have in using this as an acrylic. Don't use it as a watercolor or try to do it as an oil. It's neither one. Okay, now if it's a little too bright, it might possibly be, then we're going to tone it down. But again, look at how I'm beginning to get my definition. Look at how I'm bringing some warmer colors into it the way I'd like to bring them into it. Okay, now since that worked out satisfactorily, even though this is somewhat darker, I'd like a little bit of this color over here kind of going up this wall and losing it also. And that just adds another dimension to it. It may not be a good one, but it added it anyhow. Alright, but the key to it, I'm diluting it. It's giving me a very unusual pattern. Now this is the wall I want to really stand out. It's giving me a very unusual pattern and color that I like, but it's subdued and it's opaque, but I can still look at this and see the lines through it that I would like to be able to see on the railing. Okay, now we're going to come back up and we're just going to get a little bit of our black. We don't want this real dark. our blue, a little bit of our red and our burnt umber. Let's go mostly with the blue, the black. Now I'm going to have a slightly subdued darker area here. So let's bring this down a little bit, see what this looks like. A little bit too much blue. Let's put some of the brown and gray it down accordingly. Okay, now this is going to really put the finishing touches on it. Now see again, I'm going to remember that I've got a rounded column there, and I'm going to just start and add a little bit more water. Bring it all the way down like this. Let's just stroke it where we get rid of all those strokes that are on there. Now, when I get all the way out here, I probably would like a little bit of that reflected light up here. Okay, maybe going out the top of the picture, we'll tone it down a tiny bit more. See, what you got to remember is it's not going to take a whole lot. And then this just a little bit more up here. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Now, as far as our column goes, we can allow it to be pretty light. But since I know what I'm going to do on this, I'm going to just come down with that reflected light on here. I may live to regret it, but that's alright. That's the reflected light color that I've been using. And you see, all you want is that tint, but look at how you can paint it on and everything underneath it. You don't move what's under it, see? People think, well, that's a disadvantage. It's not. It's an advantage in acrylic. Here I've got too much definition. I'm going to show a little bit of the mortar. So you maybe again can't see that real clearly. Okay, now look at how easy, if I think this is too bright now, look at how I can just come back right over that. If I took too much out, just do this. Okay, now lastly, I do want all of this in shadow, but I can come now and subdue this entire area. Let's give it a little reflected light, maybe a little shadow all the way down. Just kind of accent that roundness a little bit, and still tone some of the other part down. Okay, that's going to be very close to what we want on here. Now in this part, we might even have this just a little bit darker to emphasize that it recedes a little bit. We don't really need to put a lot of information on there. Pull a few more darks down up here so that's not standing out too much. I think that's going to pretty well settle it down enough for what we want to do. So let's go to the fun phase now. And now what I'm going to do, because this videotape can get to be rather lengthy, I have a feeling that you're probably bored with my conversations already. But what I'd like to do now is come in and start doing the flower pots. I'm going to do one flower pot, portion of the railing, and then I'll come back as I start to complete it, and we'll look at everything again. Now before I stop at this point, see, I can look at it more and more, and I feel like this is still too bright. Now look at the control you have. See, I dried it in a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to come back and tone all of this down. I think I need a little bit more lighter color at the bottom. While it's wet, I'll just add it on there. You see, and I'll just work it and work it again until I feel like it's exactly what I want it to be. Okay, I'm satisfied with what we have here. Let's take a break and then come back and we'll do the final part of it. One last thing, I keep saying one last thing, but I'd like a little bit more of the cadmium yellow, raw sienna, and white mixture. Kind of a Naples mixture. Coming up this portion a little bit higher. I'm going to lose some of my definition. See how it kind of, where you can't see it, it ends unevenly. You don't have to worry about it. As thin as it is, let it dry. See what's nice, you spill a little water, you lift it up. Can't hurt what's up under it. Now this is going to be a lot more effective, I think, whenever the other areas put into it. Well, we're going into kind of the wind down phase of this thing, portion of it that I like the best, quite frankly, and that is where we complete the background part of it and we're able to then begin showing you what this medium is all about, as far as saving the last part of it to really paint the primary interest area and to see the flexibility that it gives you in doing all of this. Now, after I put that yellow in there, the cadmium yellow, raw sienna, white, I felt like some of the areas might be a little too yellow. Now, let me show you one of the things you'll love about this, okay? And I may not even leave this. I'm just taking a plain alizarin crimson. See, it's not affecting anything that's under it. It's beautiful. Now I'll do it in a little bit of a crosshatch motion, and I'm going to put a little red on that just to keep it in tone with the other colors in this thing that are, I like that so much, I'm going to do it a little bit more over here. I'm trying to just keep it in touch, or in the same color tones as what's already on here. Now the point I'm saying that, or the point I'd like to make about this, is the fact that you have this tremendous option to glaze colors and still keep your transparency. I mean, I'm going all the way back to the drawing board or the original board, and I can see the lines that I inked in there for the railing, so it's going to be so easy to go back and touch it up. Now, just another little thought for you on this. But I think one of the things that's beginning to stand out, and any way you look at it, is the fact that some of the flower pots and things like that are really beginning to make an abstract design, and that's what I was really hoping would happen in the beginning. Okay, now this particular thing right now would not impress a lot of people, needless to say, but I ran into this on the last one that I did, and I just have enough experience to know that if I have my basic idea right and my concept right, I can go ahead to the next level, and in time, if it's going to work, it'll take care of itself. If not, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. What I'd like to concentrate on now is putting in the railings. Now again, I'm going to put in one flower pot and some foliage. I'm going to put in some railing, one or two railings, give you the idea of what to do and the techniques. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. I thought about doing the pots next because I'm kind of anxious to do that. However, I decided that it would be a lot more fun to go ahead and do the railings, get that out of the way, and then I can really come by in at the last point and really do the flower pots, bring out what I want to bring out, and just boom, 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 complete the whole composition. So here we go. Now I took a little bit of my black, my burnt umber, ultramarine blue. Here we go. Now you have to play with these colors a little bit. Get a brush. I'm using a number 2 right now that works very well for you. Yes, I was using a 4. I'm using a number 2 because this medium does tend to thicken your brush. Now ideally, if you get to the point that you're capable of doing this, it's a great thing to be able to do, and you can learn how to do it. Now I'm getting a little problem with glare, but that is, I messed up a little bit coming back. If you can get this to work like a sign painter. Now I'll show you how, I went over that line a little bit right there, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to deal with this. I'll just lift that right up, see, and that's perfect. I probably could do the same thing down here, but I'm going to do something else on that later. Now notice, as I come down, you're not able to see this real well. Maybe we can just come in a little bit closer with it. Let's see what this does now. There we go. Hey, you can even see those ink lines coming through enough for me to do this. Now again, get that brush charged very nicely where you feel comfortable with it. Now I can actually see this very well. It's just the glare you get kind of makes you lose it. But if you can get your brush charged nicely, look at how you can just come right back around. Do that in one stroke. You should be able to learn how to do that. I've only had 40 years to practice doing it, so you should be able to, after seeing me do it, pick it up pretty quickly. Okay, now, again, I'm going to go to my flower. I could really go over the flower, but why do it? Alright, I'm going to come down again. I'm finding that I was going to experiment, and that number 2 brush is really very solid. It's working very nicely for me. Now notice, I'll almost do this whole thing here quicker than it took me to ink it, just about. Not quite, but just close to it. Alright. Now this is perfect. This is giving me just exactly what I'm looking for. Okay. Now even if you go out of the line a little bit, it's not going to matter, but you could come back and touch it up, do whatever you want to do to it. Alright, now I'm going to do that particular part of it. Then I'm going to come across. I'm going to do the next one. Now this is the next. It's kind of like the shape of a paper clip. Let's call it the paper clip. Alright. Now, again, get that brush charged nicely. I'm going to come straight down. You see why you take that little time in the beginning? I always try to explain this to people. It's a discipline. You do it enough times the hard way and the wrong way, you just learn, like I did. But I'm coming down. It's turned around here. Now, I'd like to complete one of the areas, one of the paper clips, or 2 of the paper clips. Let's just go ahead and finish this one up for you. Now, watch that brush. So you'll tend to, if you put too much water in this acrylic, you will tend to kind of lose it a little bit in terms of the shape of your brush. So you have to be very careful. Now, this is exceeding what I expected it to do. That's always very pleasant when you get into the end of something, and we all know that last 10% costs 50% to do it right. And you start getting a little bit of burnout. Now bring a line across here connecting that. Bring it across here, no big deal. Now we have our railings in the middle. Now I don't take a lot of time with things like that. It might look like I do, but or things I should say like this. But if you just, I've learned through painting enough French quarter scenes and so forth, that if you get your basic shape in there and indicate it in a suggested way, the rest really takes care of itself. You don't have to have it in there perfectly. Okay, now let's do our little triangle, because that's a very important part of this design. Bring it down like this again. I'm going to come across so we can include our triangle. Okay, and then I'm going to go around the triangle, complete this part of it. Then we're going to come back down like we're doing here. Now, don't be discouraged in the beginning. You have to play with this acrylic a little bit to get the right consistency. Those of you who have ever worked with it, you know what I'm talking about. You'll think you're getting it too dark and it's too light and so forth. But I can see, looking on the screen as it dries and whatever, this is turning out very well. So let's just go ahead and pause it, and then we'll come back. Now as we go to our concluding portion of this, if you recall, before I put it on pause, I had done a couple of the sections of the railing, the wrought-on railing, before I left you last time. I did this purposely now, because as I said, you don't need to see every detail on television. It gets very boring, I feel. But what I did, and you can see it a little bit more clearly, if you recall, I'm explaining to you that one of the primary things you have to do, let's get a little sheet of paper, and I can perhaps show you a little bit better on a blank sheet. If you're going to do something like this, you want to get a brush that works. Let's see, this number 4 is a little bit too big. So let's drop down to the number 2. You have to get the right amount of mixture, I should say, as far as water, things like this. And when we're doing a post, you can then come down and just do it in one stroke. And you might want to just practice a little bit. Now it takes a little bit of time and experience to get the right flow on it, and particularly to keep your pigments where they're strong enough. Watch, the acrylic will tend to climb up your brush. So you have to keep that in mind. But you notice it was just very simple. Now, believe it or not, this goes on much better on the illustration board, particularly after you've done a section. But that's how we want to do your 2 strokes. Now, in doing I showed you an example of how to do these designs in the middle. And I had little triangular shapes in them, and I decided to leave them because I found out, let's just go ahead and extend these 2 all the way down here so I can give you a more complete version of this. Now this is just crudely done to show you the technique, and I think it's a lot easier, as I said, than boring you with it going over and over. What I found was easier was just to come down like this, go across and over. Primary thing you've got to do is get that brush to flow in the correct way, back like this, and then down to the bottom. Well, let's extend that, extend this. And then I just came back at the top and repeated it. Came like this, but repeated it in reverse. Okay, and believe it or not, that will give you a simple enough design. Maybe we can even get up a little bit closer on that. Now, as I mentioned, they're done very crudely, but let's fill up the paper and you can see what I'm talking about. Now, likewise with the designs at the top, we did say something like this and something like this. Get it down to 1 stroke, and then what you would do is you could come around and do this. Okay, and then you would, let's just see exactly how that goes. Let's do it correctly. You'd have one coming like this. You'd pick up another one like this. You see? So it's very simple, except get the brush to working and flowing correctly. Actually, it would come off the bottom, and this would come off the bottom like this. Okay, now, you will notice that when I concluded putting the entire black area on there, what I did, remember, I'm going to have a sunlight coming down this way over my right shoulder. So I just took white paint mixed with my darker color, and notice I highlighted the tops of the railings, and then the right side like this, right side and under here. Then I did right side, right side, right side, right and a top. Right and top. And if you'll study the pattern, that's what kind of, I think, sets it off a little bit and gives it a little bit more continuity and consistency. Okay, with all of this having been said, now I think we're ready to go into the final part of this, which will be the portion where I actually get in and have what I call the fun with it, because we're going to do the flowers and the pots and so forth. Now this is where all of my work and effort, it's been probably about 4.5 hours, just the painting time alone is going into, is because I believe that at this point this would all come together. So I'm going to drop this down a little bit, and again, as I mentioned, I'm going to show you portions of it, then I'll break away and come back to something else. Now, okay, I think again if I put this up at a little bit of an angle, we get rid of a lot of that glare and you can see a lot better. So let's do that. Just take an art box or whatever I've got, put it up underneath here. Now the first thing I'd like to do is to begin with the geranium leaves. Now they generally can have a lot of cadmium yellow in them, and with the hooker's green, of course you always want to use a little bit of that burnt umber. So I'll start mixing the cadmium, the hooker's green. I see already I have a nice middle tone. You're not going to be able to see it too good on the camera. I'll pick it up for you. Okay, let me just get a little bit. This is just the cadmium yellow in the acrylic and the hooker's green. The cadmium yellow is so light it almost acts like a white, so that gives us a nice effect. Okay, now I'll get that to a point. Okay, and maybe I will take this and put it up on the screen. Okay. Now I mixed the cadmium yellow and the hooker's green, and I just mixed it together till we got what we have here. Now let's just put it all in one, and I think you can see the color pretty good now that we're getting away from the plain darker colors that don't show up too well. Now some of this I really want to glisten, so I'm going to take a lot of white over here and lighten this. Now this may not be exactly what you want. I may add more yellow as we go along. Okay, so we have a light with a lot of white in it, a little bit lighter white, I guess I could call it. Now the hooker's green in this particular medium is almost a good, it's got a lot of brown in it. I normally add the burnt umber to a lot of the greens that you have to use. They're generally too greenish. Warms them up a lot. So since I feel like that's pretty close, last thing I'm going to do is take a little brown, maybe put a little bit of the green in it, burnt umber, the green, and I'll take a little bit of the blue, and we'll get something relatively dark. You can't see this too well, but this is going to, once it gets to this range, you can't hardly tell it, and we'll add a little black to it if necessary. Now what you're seeing on the screen here is where I took some of, I'm going to repeat this for you in just a moment, but I took some of my lighter colors. I like to focus in on an area and get something to a point that I really like it. And I basically am just painting masses in. Now what I'd like to show you in a moment is how easily this covers. But I'm to a point now I want to put my flowers in. I'm going to get some cadmium red. And so the newer colors we're going to have are the cadmium yellow, hooker's green, and actually we had burnt sienna before, which I haven't gotten out. We'll get that in a moment. And then some cadmium red. Now before we go to the flowers, let's put a little bit more of the greenery in, because to be quite honest with you, I failed to have the recorder on. Notice how, well, the first thing I'm going to do when we get back is, well, we can do it either way. See, it's so easy to highlight. Alright, I'm coming in with some of my lighter colors around the edges. You use a lot of suggestion. Don't hesitate at all on this type of thing. And in fact, I wasn't as conscious of my light source as I should be. So notice how easy this covers. So let's go back in and pull some highlights out of some of these areas, particularly like here's some middle tone. I want this to stand out a little bit more, so we'll pick out some of this and here. Okay, now notice I'll come down and pick out some lighter colors and tones that I think are applicable. And probably in this case I'm going to go directly to the middle tone. Now I purposely haven't included any of the darker tones in here yet, because I really like for this to dry. Then I'm going to come back and highlight it and accent it. But I'll just accent some of this a little bit with the middle tones. Okay. Now as that begins to take shape, I'll let it dry for just a moment. I'm quite pleased. I'm not a flower expert, but I'm pleased with the effect that I'm getting so far on this. Okay, now to get our geraniums, I'm just going to take some almost pure cadmium red, and what I want to show you is how beautifully this will cover. Okay, we'll just, again, it may not be our final color as far as what we're using, but this is what you will love about acrylic, I promise you. Okay, and just to be different, we're going to have this one, and then we'll actually have two together. Now, I lost one of these in here, but I know I wanted one more up here. But look at how beautifully, that's it's coming out a little orange on the television, but look at how beautifully that's covering there. Okay, that's really beginning to give me the effect that I want to have on it. Can't have enough of these geraniums. They're very beautiful, and this is really the punch for the whole painting. Now I've got another one out here, many more than I had in my reference material, but I purposely did that because I feel that this is really going to give it the punchline that I'm looking for. Okay, now let's just give it a little bit of an accent. Maybe have a little leaf coming off of this. I haven't really gotten to the loosening up part yet. I've just found in things like this you almost have to get your first coat on there. Okay. And then you can make your decisions about how you want to change it and what you want to do a little bit later. Now, I'm purposely going to tone some of these down as we continue on down with it, because these colors are so bright they can become very artificial looking in no time at all if you're not careful. And I want some of them purposely to blend. I don't want them all standing out equally. This is really a lot of fun to finally get to this point. That's going to go all the way back up against the side of this. Now I'm actually changing. There was not really a strong light source on this thing, but whatever I had on it, I'm actually reversing it. I want the light to feel like it's coming from this direction. Now you look at some of the reds up here, as they blend into the actual painting itself, it begins to lessen as far as the brilliancy, but that's where you come back in, and I'll show you the real fun you have with that in a moment. Okay, now I have enough of this done. Now I think I'd like to take my burnt sienna and that's going to give us a nice orangey looking effect. And I'll probably use a variety of colors to get what I'm wanting on this. Now I'm taking the burnt sienna, again adding a little bit of cadmium yellow to it. That gives you a nice defined lighter color for this. Now again, there's not much we can do about the glare, so we'll just live with it. But we'll start with it like this. Actually, this is not going to be a bad lighter brown to begin with. Lighter color. Now some of what's under it, of course, is going to come through. We'll cross that bridge on all of that in a moment. This is a good light color, still a little bit neutral for what I want, but we'll get our basic coat in there, and then we'll go from there. Now the fun of in all of this, of course, is you really can create as you go along. It's just limitless with this particular medium. Once again, we'll take our lighter color, pick up some reflected light over here. Alright, now let's just go with some of the plain burnt sienna now. Kind of strengthen it. Some of the areas I know that I want darker. Just one stroke right up under here will give us that edge at the top. Kind of blend it into the bottom area. Of course, this is drying. It's drying quite differently from what it is when you first put it down. Of course, it looks very bright on your screen, but it's a kind of a dull middle tone. We'll take care of that in just a moment. But one thing I think we can safely look for at the top of this is that with our sunlight coming from above, as we have it on our railings and all, you're going to have a really nice light area right at the top of it. It'll curve around like this. So we're going to really utilize that lid up there to make that stand out a little bit better. Now we'll have to mix a little bit of the ultramarine blue and burnt umber to get the darks that we're trying to get. A little bit of black, because as you build it up to a certain point, then before I do that, let's come in and do this so we can make sure what we're dealing with. Okay, it has like a metal wrought on circular type support that goes around the base of it. So we'll put this in first. And you can have the same thing in the back like this. And we'll want to darken this under the object very, very strongly. Okay, now with that in mind, take a little bit of that darker. We really want to come in now and begin to work in some darks. Try to antique this thing up a little bit as we go along, if at all possible. Now under our lid here, we're going to, under the top highlighted area I should say, we're going to bring our lid down a little bit. Now this is like watercolor. You see, you bring it to a certain point, and it's your decision when you want to do it and how you want to do it, but you basically can then put washes on there and begin to lightly bring your colors down, you see. Now across the base you have all kind of designs and things on these particular items as far as the way they weather, so we're going to figure out something along here as we go along that's quite interesting. But we pick out a little bit stronger reflected light over here and up here, and maybe even up here as we round this corner. Even though it may not be real bright, we'll pick up some of the lighter colors. But now I'm opting for coming over to the side area here and getting some really, really strong light areas in here. So let's do this. I may want to come back and add more color to it. But for now, this is going to be sufficient. Okay. Let's just basically try to lighten one edge of this up. Okay, we're bringing it around now and subduing some of those edges again. Okay, that's beginning to stand out like I wanted to now. Okay, over in the shadow side of it, now I'm not afraid, as I develop this further along, I know I need some strong darks. So I'm really not afraid to take my black color now and whatever else I want to mix with it and begin to really develop these shadows a little bit more. Now, you'll always have different ways that this will weather at the base of them, but for whatever reason these pots always seem to have lighter sections going across the bottom of them, whether it's the way the water blends through them or whatever, I don't really know. I don't know that much about them, but it's quite interesting. So we're going to start developing some of this in a way that I think will be very interesting. Maybe even come up with a little bit of it up here. Okay, now we'll add a little bit of water to this and blend it as it goes into the shadow. Okay, and why don't we just subdue that a little bit maybe and get it in a gray range, and we'll come out with a little bit of it on this side. Now that's probably going to be a little bit too bright for what we want, but we'll just see what it looks like. Alright, now we're going to drop down, not getting exactly what I want in this reflected light with the burnt sienna, so let's drop down a little raw sienna. Might be a little bit too bright, but we'll take care of that later. But I feel that the reflected light is quite critical. Too bright, so we'll just blend a little sienna with it. That's burnt sienna, and I think it'll work. Now we have the black wrought iron holder that we may want to accent a little bit on the bottom, and let's accent it with a little bit of the gray. Just take white and some black. We'll accent it with the lighter color at the top, like this. I don't know why, but this thing ought to have a little yellow in it. Maybe even a little bit of red. Who knows by the time we get through. Okay, now we had a wrought iron type holder behind it. Put a little light edge to pull that out, you see. However that works. Now we're getting very close to something I think that's workable. I'm satisfied with it. We may want to make some alterations on it later, but I think for now it looks fine. Might want to take a little bit of the white and just highlight a little bit of this band that goes around it where it's not a solid mass. Pick up a little reflected light on it over here too. Now we might still go back in and do a little bit more, but for now that'll suffice. Now this is solid black. We'll accent the underside of this likewise with the solid black, and also maybe get a little bit of it up in here. As I come back off of this now, I think you can see all the colors a little bit more realistically without the really bright portions of them. Now, mind you, a lot of this will have to be changed and redone. For instance, I have an area right here where I know I'm going to come in, I'm going to put some darker greens at the base of this, which you're allowed to do. It's all part of it and it's in there. That's the fun I can't wait to get back to, but I'm going to leave it for now because that's what will start really giving this some body and essentially allowing the areas I want to stand out to really stand out a lot more. But I'll leave it for now. And let's just go and concentrate on this main flower. I think I've got enough videotape to do everything I want to do on it. But okay. We'll just come in, and again, it covers quite beautifully. Now here's where, even though I'm certainly not a geranium expert, I don't feel like I'm much of an expert in any kind of flower really, but I have a little bit of a feel for what foliage does, having painted so many things over a period of time. I know one thing, around the edges you always want to have a lot of little things dotting out from it. You know, something to make it a little bit more real and alive. I'm going to have a lot more up there too when I get to it. And in the case of some of this, I'll go back in and I'll highlight it even with pure white, like I'm doing right here, you see. So there's just so many things that you can do that'll be fun. But let's remember, this is our primary purpose for doing this, is the foliage. And so I'd like to come in and block in an area here. We'll put a lot of it in middle tone, with the lighter middle tones. Then I'm going to come back in with just a plain Hooker's green. And we'll block in some of the middle tone areas to some degree. Now we're not going to have too many darks going on around the edges. I notice on this, I'm really what I consider painting the painting now. I don't know if you can see, I'm just really blending that together very quickly, and what I'm hoping for, you know, and it's where you don't have to be a flower expert, I don't think, to do this. I'm hoping that at the end of the process that, bring it in a little bit closer, that what I'll have is not so much something that's extremely detailed where you can go out and count every petal on the flowers, but something that will have somewhat of an abstract design, which is what I'm striving for. And will give you the overall effect of what we're trying to do rather than individual parts of it being so perfectly done. And I'll see if I can explain that to you a little bit more as we go along. Okay. Now again, I just love the geraniums. I'm going to come back and do some other things on them, but for right now, this is just fun, finally getting to this point and being able to put them in there. Again, as close up as I am, they're extremely bright, much brighter than they really would be, I guess, in real life. And I did kind of load them up because I think that they, quite frankly, make the painting. And we'll just continue this all around here. I think I'm just spacing them out basically like I've got them. You know, as I do it, I've got 1 and 1. I don't think I want to stick with just that, so we're going to put another small one right here, close to it, which I think would be acceptable. Again, not being an expert or even an amateur. Now as I look at this developing, I'm very pleased with it. I know there'll be some sections in here. I'll come in later and I'll just take this darker. You can see that with the glare. and break this up some more where it'll have a meaning to it. So I'm getting to a point that I really like the overall effect of this, to the degree that I may just come back in and highlight a few light areas to really bring it out, and that might be all I'll do on it, especially where it's growing in clusters like that. And now we can have a nice pretty shaped leaf coming out here. You'll have some of those individual leaves, or leaves I should say, whatever is correct terminology, going off of them. And maybe even here suggest a little something. Up here, going up this particular vine. Now I notice you have a lot of the, what do I want to call it now, the runners, shall we say, that come off of it. Essentially your new growth comes off of, and your flowers or whatever. It's got a kind of a raw sienna tint to it, so I'm going to kind of indicate that and some of this detail now as I go along. Get a little bit more white in there so that stands out better. I like to kind of lay things out like that, then I'll come back and lighten them and darken them. Just really play with them as I'm developing the overall pattern of it. And then a lot of it you'll have will be the green. So we don't want to lose sight of that. Okay, as you can see, I'm just generally playing now. I probably should know when to stop, but I'm still going to just keep doing this because it's fun. Okay, now, I think at this point I'd like to stop. It's drying enough, and go ahead and make my final statement, or whatever that happens to be on this thing. So let's come in and we'll take some of the, I've got to really fill some of these areas in a little bit more. I jumped around a little bit in my excitement and jubilation, either to finish this thing or whatever. But let's fill in some more of these leaves and some more of the particular effect that I'm trying to get on it. And this is where you really will find that acrylic is worth its weight in gold, because when you come back in now and you start doing these kind of effects where you want to put accents, you're painting like an oil, but even more than an oil painting. I feel that its ability to cover and so forth is just something that's beyond comprehension until you do it and experience it. Now see, what I love is I'm coming in, I want some of this to be lost. See, I don't want every leaf standing out perfectly. It gives you a chance to come back in when it's dry and really do your thing as far as that kind of thing goes. So like inside of this, I might want to accent whatever you do on geraniums, you know how that goes. Put a little accents under these, you see. Now I'm getting very close to what I want to have on the foliage in these areas. I'll come back down, maybe hit a few more areas, the base of it here. Remember, that's the darker tone that I mixed in the beginning. Now, I had repainted some of the section in here. I let it dry a little bit so it's not muddy, you see. Now I'll come back. Now I'll get into some areas, and I may just decide I want the foliage out here to really be black in front of it, you see, in some of these middle tones. So we'll just do it. Now, it's all getting to a point that I feel that the white now would come in and highlight some of these leaves magnificently, which I think that they'll tend to go in that direction to some degree. Now I'll do it more on the areas over to the right that I think are absorbing the light. And of course, the more color you can get, and the variety and the values, I think takes this out of the realm of predictable and repetitious, and makes it to be really, really quite interesting. And what I'm primarily doing is wherever I feel like it's dead looking, I'll break it up with something like this. And I say, I know it's going to dry a lot lighter. Well, doing all of these wonderful things and you're not even seeing what I'm doing. All right, I'm just coming back, highlighting, etc. Okay, this is pretty close to what I want here. Since I'm on a roll and I like it, I'll come back down here now and I'll do the same thing. Not monotonously now, that's what I'm trying to break up. But I think where you have your brightest rays and whatever, you can catch a lot of highlights and really accent areas as I'm accenting that you feel should be brought out a little bit more. Okay, now I'm very close to leaving that, and I'd like to come back in now, and I might take a little bit of the cadmium yellow and the cadmium red. I'll just see what it looks like, if I like it. Put a little white with it. And then let's come back in and highlight a few of the geraniums. Now notice I'm going to highlight it, get a little bit off of the bright red. But in conjunction with that, I'm not exactly sure what all the definition would be on the geraniums, but I know that they're going to have some definition in the leaves. We could leave them totally without any particular design if we wanted to, or detail, or I think you can safely come in, do a few things like I'm going to do right now that will give them a little bit more life and definition. And I think again, you got to watch the repetition. Now, one of the beautiful things about this red, see, I painted that red over. I may just take some pure white and the red, because I painted that red right over the other board and the other color, and it didn't really have an opportunity to blossom. So I kind of like that, what I'm doing right now. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. All right, I'm satisfied. A little bit more than they are, but I think they're so bright they pretty well stand out on their own. Okay, now I'll let some of this dry a little bit. Some of these white areas may be a little bit too bright, but for my purposes, I'm pretty close to where I would like to be at this point. Now, you're going to see a dramatic difference as I lift this up back again to where we can see the entire composition. Two things are going to happen. You're going to see me take the tape off the bottom, which I'll go ahead and do right now, and it's going to reveal the front of a porch. This is going to reveal this top part up here, the front of the archway. Now, what I'm hoping for is that with the information I have down here, the busyness of this, the abstract shape and the quietness of this, and then the movement going this way and this way, when I'm through with all of this, I'm hoping it's going to be sufficient to accomplish what I'd like to accomplish. Now, since this particular area that we're looking at right now is exposed to the light, I'd like to make this a kind of a creamy color using the cadmium yellow, and I'm going to handle this delicately, I hope. I'm going to use the cadmium yellow and the raw sienna. If you remember, to make a pretty Naples yellow, you use the cadmium, the raw sienna, and then you add a little white to that. Okay, just distracted for a moment thinking about something else that I want to do before I finish this. Okay, let's get some white. Now remember the colors. It's raw sienna, cadmium yellow, lightens it up and brightens it up, and of course, and that's all you have, by the way, when you have Naples yellow in your watercolor. They just take you a couple of yellows or one yellow, whichever. Once all your colors are a mixture of a different number of colors and maybe a little bit of white, and I've got enough of it to really dilute this and just put a light wash over everything. So this is what we'll do right now. It's going to get rid of that harsh white, give it a very much of a sunlit feeling. Now I'm going to come across the base of this, and I'm going to do the same thing, but I'll come back in a few moments and tone this particular part of it down. Now the nice thing, see, I'm just doing this very quickly. Could you see me doing it up there? Yes, that was fine. Okay. Now see, this is going to take the harsh white out of it, and then when it dries, I'll come in and I'll put a light shadow area on maybe this area right here. We'll just have to wait and see. I don't know exactly what I want to do on this part yet, but I've got it where I want it and I'm very satisfied. Okay, that's going to be enough on there to really stand out. Now what I'm going to do in a moment, I've got so much red in the purples and whatever, and the shadows, that I'm actually going to come back in a moment, and I'm going to wash a little, faintly wash a little red over that. Let's blow dry this now. Now, even though you can't see this extremely well, it has somewhat of a Naples yellow tint to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of my cadmium. I'm actually going to mix it with this color. This isn't going to seem like it makes a lot of difference, but it really does, because I don't want the bright colors on these edges to be totally out of sync with the color harmony in the rest of my painting. So just a little bit of red added to it, you'd be surprised at the difference that'll make in terms of toning it down. That's too much, of course, but no problem, I hope. Yeah, she's all coming up. There we go. It's a little closer to what I'd like. Knowing that this is very transparent, it's going to dry a lot lighter. Okay, that gives me the color harmony I want. I like it so well, we'll do a little bit more of it down here. I'm going to just wash it very lightly over this entire area to tone it down somewhat. You probably can't even hardly tell the tint that I'm putting on there, but this is going to tone it down, and it will be just enough to make it where it's catching direct sunlight, but it's not too overboard. Now I've got very rich, pretty color. It's got a lot of red in it. That's just exactly what I wanted. Now I don't want this to be totally separate from the rest of the composition, as I mentioned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my ultramarine blue, a little bit of alizarin crimson. Let's see if that's still where I can utilize it. Get a little bit more of that out. Okay, take the ultramarine blue, the alizarin, put a little black with it to gray it, a little burnt umber with it to just warm it up enough to where it doesn't overpower everything. Now what we've actually got here, I purposely made the ledge under here appear to go back just a little bit. I did this originally because I knew that I would have an area down here that I'd have to do something with. And I'd have to break it up in one form or another. So we'll just come under here now and put the ledge in. Going over the line a little bit, that's okay. And probably make this a little darker. Because what I would like to do, particularly in this area here, is to maybe show a little bit of tone right in this part of it. Not to be like a cast shadow or anything like that. This I'll just run lightly right up under here, let it disappear. But that's going to really be very close to what I'd like to have when I may go just a tiny bit darker. But see what's nice, with this completely dry, I can work this now so well. I'm going to leave that edge of the porch completely light and just suggest the rest of it. Now watch how, a little trick I was showing one of my students the other night, when you're in illustrating type work, you really learn how to utilize these things. I want this edge to just be a little bit more receding to look like an edge. So just by putting that little bit stronger dark there, coming up here, repeating it, it does just what we want it to do as far as making it look like it's receding and one area is behind another area. Now you learn in this acrylic, there are times it just gets a little bit too wet, and you have and what you have to do is just stop and pick it back up again. Rather, you stop, let it dry, and then pick up where you left as far as putting the darker areas in. Get a little bit more shadow under here. Now, something tells me I want this a little darker, but I think I'm going to leave it. In fact, I think I'm going to conclude the composition right now, and we're going to take the tape off. And anything else that we need to do, we'll just do later. Alright, we're going to call this one completed. I'll even let you witness me signing it, so we won't need to worry about picking it back up again. Now, again, I'll know when I take the white up whether this works or not, because primarily what concerns me is the archway, and maybe I didn't repeat enough of the lighter tones in here, but the white mat around it is what I like about doing this acrylic. Always tells the story. And I'll let you be the judge. Bear with me just a second here. If you don't rip this off very carefully, you will tend to separate the edges. Now what's the edges where you might rip the top layer off of your board. Now what's unique about this, and I've always loved it, is that when you do rip your tape off, it always better than on any other type of thing. It leaves such a nice, sharp, clean, almost like a matted edge. Now we're getting a lot of competition from what's around it, so let's eliminate that. We'll get a large whiteboard, slide it on. I've still got it up at an angle. Now, see that that's the unfortunate thing. That white really does. This is a toughie. I think we're clearer like this, maybe even better, if I was to make it lie down flatly. Now, I think, no, the glare is a little bit too great. Well, unfortunately, I'm satisfied with it. I think you have to look at the photograph possibly to really get the final results, and you can make your determination based on that. Now it's going to really feel very strange. You're going to witness me signing this. With some students I have to do this to indicate that they can't work on it anymore. But it's going to be very, very strange signing 97. First one, 97.